In terms of people pleasing, I understand this topic very well because I am a people pleaser and it's impacted me my whole life. And for me, it's an automatic response to things, especially when things get stressful. I will be like, yes, whatever you need. Don't worry about me. You do you. And I withhold my truth. And it stems from my childhood. So before I get into everything, the nitty gritty, I want this video to be about first explaining what people pleasing is, how it develops with brain science, and how the childhood really impacts this people pleasing. And then when you are a people pleaser, how do you get out of it? So that's my goal for today. Now, people pleasing is a survival state. We actually have 4 survival states. A lot of people don't know. They know of the 3, which is fight, flight, and freeze, but we also have fawn. And this is where people pleasing comes into play. A fawn is a state that happens when you minimize your needs and your voice so that the abuse stops. And it's different from freeze. Freeze means you shut down, you withdraw, whereas a fawn will be like, yes, anything you say, you're absolutely right. They may even convince themselves that their truth wasn't their truth and the other person's truth is the reality, to avoid losing anything else or to avoid feeling unsafe and to gain a sense of security. So a fawn will put aside their needs for the needs of another. And I believe that a fawn people pleaser type of person develops when over time, over the course of your childhood, you were placed into very unsafe, emotionally unsafe situations, and it would have been much easier to just agree with the aggressor or the dangerous situation to avoid more harm. For example, someone who grows up with a parent that is narcissistic, a narcissist is always right, and you may develop, at least they think so, you may develop a survival state of fawn agreeing with a narcissistic person because it feels pointless to argue your point. So it's really a self-protection mode. And a classic people pleaser says yes to everything. And that was my problem when I first started grad school. Can you do this? Can you do this? Yes, yes, yes. Because I did not want to disappoint them, because disappointment in my family as a child meant harm. So I avoided disappointing my family by any means necessary, which would be to be very small and very silent and to just do whatever they told me to do so I would not get hurt. So these core needs that we have, of course we need food, we need shelter, we need water, but we also have these core emotional needs. Those core emotional needs include a sense of safety, respect, security, acceptance, love, and a sense of importance. So all of these needs, there's more, but those are the basic ones that impact us as kiddos. And when you figure out to be nice and cater to your parents' needs, you start people pleasing very young. And it's a core wound. It really is. And the inner child wounds that I have, and I even like to think of it as inner children, because when I say inner child, I'm actually thinking about my inner children at several different age points, all with different wounds. I have wounds at various ages, so when I think of my inner child, I'm actually thinking about all of my inner children and all of their wounds and the abandonment and attachment trauma that they have experienced. And it is true that it was much easier for me to agree with the adult in my life or the situation in my life rather than to speak my truth. And now, as an adult, that has played out in my relationships with friends and family. So now we're going into what to do about it. If you can identify that you are a people pleaser, the first step is to recognize that you're a people pleaser, but also to start sitting with and reflecting on all your past relationships and how did your people pleasing impact the relationship? What type of partner did you pick? And for most people pleasers, we pick a very dominant, narcissistic person, which mirrors our own family dysfunction. Is until we start breaking the cycle will unconsciously continue to repeat and repeat with friendships and relationships. So when I was in the dating scene, well, I still am, but I often would pick men who were so self-absorbed that I would often not recognize my own needs in the relationship because I was so used to caring for the needs of my partner or my friend. And until recovery, I should say, I never had really sat with what are my needs? What is it that I want out of life? How can I achieve those things? What are my goals? What kind of partner do I want? I never sat with that, and because of that, I got abused. I got manipulated, trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is a whole nother thing, a whole nother video, but people pleasing goes hand in hand with that. So to break free of this, you first have to identify who you are. And that is a big question, and that's really hard. And for me, I didn't know who I was at all. I was never asked, what is it that you want, Rachel? It's just not a thing. And what are my values? And how do you want your life to be? And you must identify who you are first, and then your worth. See, I, as a natural people pleaser, put my worth into the hands of others many times. And how they treated me impacted the way I viewed myself. So they had a lot of power in my life. And when you don't know your worth and you depend on somebody to tell you what your worth is, you end up being abused. So many things. So first is find who you are. What do you like? What do you not like? What are the things you could live without? What are the things you can't live without? What are the things that bring you pleasure? And what are the things that you despise? Once you figure out who you are, then you can start establishing boundaries. Boundaries are a huge thing because people pleasers, we don't know what boundaries are, and we were never modeled boundaries. Our boundaries were crossed time and time again by literally taking away our needs and caring for the other's needs. So there is no boundaries. And so part of the work too of breaking free of people pleasing is setting boundaries for yourself, boundaries with friends, boundaries with family, and boundaries to keep you safe. So one thing I say to people pleasers and to myself is when you meet someone and you think they're wonderful, pump the brakes, because that might be a trauma bond or just going back into that survival state where you're naturally putting your needs aside for this other person, so you think that they're wonderful. And so I encourage people pleasers just pump the brakes a little bit and to think about what are the red flags that you're seeing and what are the green flags. So you should run after the first red flag is shown. And people pleasers, we're just now learning that, right? I mean, we were never taught that. So I reflect on who you are as a person without this significant other or this close friend, whoever you are naturally people pleasing, and what is your identity without them? Do you feel secure without them? Do you need them for validation? Do you need them to be your voice, to guide you? And if your answer is yes to any of those, that's a cue to reevaluate and how you aren't taking care of yourself while instead you are depending on another to tell you what your needs are and to please the other. And breaking free of this takes work. It takes so much work. But I promise that your brain is capable of healing itself and breaking free of this people-pleasing with repetition. So our brains in childhood got wired a certain way for survival to naturally incline us to people please. However, when you start sitting with that question of what is it that I want, or who am I, we start rewiring the way that we automatically think about others, ourselves, and relationships. So there's a lot of power in that. And one thing that has helped me break free of people-pleasing was recovery, so emotional sobriety, understanding my codependency, recognizing patterns as a repeat of my past trauma, my childhood traumas, and my inner children wounds. I also think that starting a self-compassionate voice in your head to combat the negative voice that says you're not enough, constantly telling that voice, thank you, but no, I am enough and I'm worthy. And it takes a lot of practice. And I highly recommend affirmations. Affirmations save me some days. I mean, to tap into my inner children, I will wrap my arms around myself and I will repeat a certain phrase. As a people pleaser and as a codependent, I often thought that I was too much. I was too much to handle, so I better make myself as small and as quiet as possible in the relationship with someone else. And when I started breaking free of that, I would just hold myself like this and say, you are enough. You are worthy. You aren't too much. You're incredible. And I'm so sorry that you ever felt less than. That's not fair. And that's all in the work of self-compassion, being gentle with myself. Oh my God, especially when looking at my past and looking at all the partners I've dated, or all the friendships I've had that were so one-sided, right? One-sided friendships because I'm a people pleaser, I'm a caretaker. I look back with a compassion now rather than judgment, and I would be very hard on myself before I found recovery and emotional sobriety of, why are you so dumb? Why would you do that? All the signs were there. But ultimately, I knew what I knew, and at that time, I knew how to people please. I knew how to live from a place of survival. That's all I knew, actually. And so with that, I can be gentle with myself and I can be compassionate. And that's where there's power. And that's where there's growth. So if you're a people pleaser and you're listening to me rant, just know that you're enough. And you can literally rewire your brain by starting to assert your boundaries, know your worth, and discover who you are, what are your likes, and how you can be an entity or a beautiful person without validation or acceptance from anyone else, but rather those things, those needs come from you. Thank you for listening. I hope that this was helpful, and please subscribe. I'm very new to YouTube, so I'm figuring all this crap out, but if you want me to talk about something, maybe trauma bonding, let me know. I would be more than happy to talk about it. Thank you.